What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Punk Rock Radar. We're doing another tier list today, but a little bit different. But before we get into it, I want to introduce my very special guest, somebody I've been wanting to collaborate with for well over a year. We were just talking about it. My good friend Dickie of the band B Fairy plays guitar and sings in that, and formerly of the Punk Bunker podcast from New York to Yorkshire. Dickie, how you doing, man?
Very good. Thank you for the very kind and generous introduction. Long time listener, first time caller. N- nice to be here and maybe bring a bit of transatlantic charm to the Punk Rock Radar YouTube channel.
Yes, yeah, man. I'm so stoked to have you on here. Dickie and I have been internet friends for a long time. We both started our Instagrams around the same time during lockdown. We became friends, kept in touch ever since then. So this is a long time coming. We finally get to do something together. And if you couldn't tell, we're a few time zones away. So I'm doing this pretty early in the morning. And my morning, Dickie, got off to a little bit of a rough start. Uh, I was just making my coffee downstairs, and I have one of those AeroPress coffees, and I'm pushing it down, and the little cap on the AeroPress shot out. So the coffee goes all over my shirt, all over the kitchen. I haven't cleaned it up yet. But I'm home alone. My wife's at work, so I'm safe for a little bit. But that's how my morning started. So I don't have a coffee, but I do have some BioSteel, not a sponsor, but tastes like Flintstone vitamins. So that's going to get me through this episode.
I was going to say I'm drinking a Coors Light because it's the afternoon, and people are going to be like, "Oh, drinking Coors Light, that's not a real beer." And to my answer to that is, your favorite beer is cold. Your second favorite beer is free. So just shut up.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah, if I was drinking a beer right now, that would be a sign of a problem. But Dickie, do you want to describe a little bit of what orgcore is for the lesser versed folk out there who may not be sure?
So the orgcore is, I think it's kind of like almost a bit tongue in cheek, the actual term. But it's mainly bands that are quite popular on the punknews.org website. It tends to be the kind of gruff punk, flannel shirt wearing, bearded, hot water music, Latterman, Leatherface, all that kind of good stuff. That's how I'd kind of describe it. And it's kind of my favorite subgenre, really. How about yourself? Would you have a different kind of description for it, or
No,
I kind of hit the nail on the head there?
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. So orgcore, like at least how like I remember it, like punknews.org was like instrumental in me finding new bands and getting punk news back in the day. Like when I was in high school, there was really, I'm sure there's some smaller ones, but there was punknews.org, and then there was absolutepunk.net that was kind of more geared towards pop punk. And yeah, all the bands that are that were big on punknews.org, they kind of have like a genre all their own. I thought it was gonna be mostly Midwest bands today, but I was surprised that we don't have too many on this first installment. But that's kind of what I think of when I think of orgcore. Like you said, the beard, the flannel, the gruff vocals, and quite a few bands, maybe all of them, fall into that category. And let's just get straight into it, man. The first band we're doing is Anchor Arms, a band, I'll be honest, I was not too familiar with. And I've seen the album art before. I've listened to a handful of songs, but this was really the first time I sat down and made an effort to listen to the entire album. What are you doing with Anchor Arms?
Yeah, so Anchor Arms, one album, but what an album it is. Cold Blooded, just almost a perfect album. So frigging good. I'm ranking Anchor Arms in B tier. So pretty solid, but there are a lot of great bands on this list where I couldn't really justify ranking them any higher. Bear in mind they have just the one LP.
Yeah, I'm okay with that ranking. Like I said, I wasn't too familiar with them, so there's no nostalgia playing in here for me. But the vocals were kind of different when you're looking at them compared to the other bands. They almost remind me a little bit of Audio Karate in spots. I enjoyed the album, but just because I had no real attachment to them, I'm gonna put them in C. It's definitely worth listening to. So if you don't know Anchor Arms, make sure and check them out. But the next band we're gonna do, I was familiar with. We've got Chinese Telephones from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My first exposure to the guys was a 7-inch split with Dear Landlord, I believe. Both the songs on that split are pretty good. The album, again, maybe a band I haven't listened to in close to 10 years, but I enjoy this album. Its only flaw for me, I didn't find a ton of standout tracks on here. So for that reason, I'm going to put Chinese Telephones in my B tier. Decent band, maybe not a ton of standouts. What about you, Chinese?
So here's my first spicy hot take, and I'm probably going to get cancelled for this. But Chinese Telephones are a D tier band for me. But that's no real reflection on them as a whole. I think if they're against almost any other band, then it probably rank a bit higher. But for me, with the other bands on here, they just don't click for me, and they're not quite in my kind of wheelhouse of what I really like. But they're still pretty good. Like I'm not like D seems really harsh, but realistically, they are a really good band.
Yeah, and I literally always forget to do this, so I'll say it now. We're gonna put 2 bands in every tier. So that is the reason there's gonna be some in C and some in D. So if it's your first episode with us, bands in the D tier, we're not hating on them. It's just part of the game. Just what we're doing. There's probably only one band on this list that I really don't care for, but it's definitely not the next one, Dickie, because we've got some legends from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're gonna hit Dillinger 4. What are you doing? Feels like summer in October, and I hope this day is never over. And it feels like summer. What are you doing with them?
S tier.
Yeah.
S tier. Like, I mean, I'm pretty predictable. Yeah, of course, D4 are going to be S tier because they're one of the greatest punk bands of all time, and in Old Core they're just so far up there, and I can't think of a bad song they've even recorded. So, got to be S tier for me.
Yeah, I'm right with you. This was probably the easiest decision on the board for me. And not only are the songs S tier, but the song names are also S tier. One of the best in the business at naming songs. My favorite song by them is probably Gainesville. I know that's what really like their anthem. I like to pick like a dark horse song, but that song, like I've heard it so many times and it still just gets stuck in my head randomly to this day. But yeah, Dillinger 4 is without a doubt an S tier core band. No debate for me whatsoever. The next band we're gonna hit, I believe from Jersey. I should have looked it up beforehand, but we're gonna hit the Ergs, another band that's been around a while. And Dickie, I'm assuming we're just doing the Ergs band, not Mikey Erg, because I think his bands and his projects would be not only a episode, but like probably a whole series of bands Mikey Erg has been involved in. But
yeah,
I'm gonna go A.
He's a pretty prolific lad.
Yeah, he's got to be like one of the most prolific punk musicians of all time. Like I when I pulled up the Ergs, just like looked them up a little bit, it was just like this huge list of Mikey Erg ancillary bands. But yeah, I'm going A. I didn't see myself doing this, but like listening back to all the albums, there's like at least a handful of songs I would consider standouts, including The album, it was an EP that came out earlier this year. This Strip Mall song on there is really, really good. So I'm going to show some respect, some fellow Jerseyans, and I'm going to put them in the A tier. You sounded a little surprised. Are we different on this one?
So won't you come along with me tonight? There's a spirit in my brain that I just can't shake, and now with you I'll be alright. So come on, come on, come on, come on, 'cause
Yeah, I'm gonna straight up disrespect them and put them in D tier.
Ooh, not a fan of the Ergs.
No, again, they just don't hit that sweet spot for me compared to the other bands that are on the list. I think, as I said earlier, with the Chinese telephones, if they'd have been in amongst other bands, maybe they'd have gone as high as A even. But with the other bands on this list, I couldn't rank them any higher than D. But that's not to say they're not a good band.
Yeah, don't worry about it, because I not this next one, but I think there's a band coming up pretty soon that you and I are definitely not going to see eye to eye on. So we'll get that in. But up next, we've got Latterman, who, despite being from Long Island, is a band I've never seen live. I don't know how that happened. I was going to a ton of shows in their heyday, but what are you doing with Latterman?
break the bottle, I still won't find you in the bottom, or anywhere around here.
Latterman are a tier band for me. Absolutely love Latterman. Although I must admit that no matter where we go, the LP is the absolute standout, and the other records aren't quite as strong. But man, that album is so good, and they've inspired countless other bands, and also birthed other bands just from the bands that the members have gone on to form: Iron Chic, Reviver, Tender Defender, etc. So yeah, A tier band for me. They could have been A tier on another day, but there's another band that had to be an S tier along with D4. Not your day, Latterman. Sorry.
Yeah, see, I'm with you. Like, I kind of feel like Latterman's got to be one of the most underrated bands ever. Like, they don't really get any credit outside of the orgcore circles. But speaking of orgcore, for me, this is the first band that I truly remember being orgcore. Back in the day, back in the early 2000s, you couldn't really go on any real message board or punk news post without seeing at least a mention of them. So for me, they're the first band that I would classify as orgcore. But I had a late riser in this that pushed them out of the A tier. A band I wasn't even very familiar with, but I really clicked with. So I'm putting Latterman in B. So we're not too different on our thoughts there. But Dickie, you're gonna kill me on this next one on Leatherface, because I know you're a big fan of Leatherface. We've talked about them several times. I think they're the only band on this list that is from England, but just not clicking for me, man. They've got a lot of albums. They've probably influenced more than half the bands on this list, but listening to all the albums and EPs over the last couple weeks, I mean, maybe months. We've been talking about doing this episode for about a month. I hate to do it, man, but I'm putting Leatherface down in the basement in the D tier. I blasphemy. Yeah, your face says it all. I didn't want to do it, and I was listening again this morning. I was like, am I sure I want to do this? Am I sure I want to put some of the OG orgcores in the basement? But that I just couldn't get into any real album or song. What about you, man? I feel like I know where it's going, but I got to hear it from the source.
Wow is all I've got to say. That incredible disrespect to my fellow compatriots, my Sunderland mates, Leatherface. Wow. But fair play, because this an all-core list, and you could have pandered and just stuck them in the S tier, which is exactly what I'm going to do. But I mean, Leatherface are probably, there's maybe one band just across punk rock that would pip Leatherface to my favorite band of all time. So they've got to be an S tier for me. Just one of my favorite bands of all time. But you know, I respect your decision as much as I disagree with it.
I felt bad, and I do want to say too, we're doing this solely on personal preference. Nothing else is coming into play here. Just how much we like them, and I didn't see doing it, man. I thought, I'm like, oh, you know, Leatherface will be a B, but when you came up with the list, I had trouble. I struggled. There's a lot of bands that I clicked with just a little bit more, and songs that, you know, I was singing along, and songs I knew, and just Leatherface was just never a band I got into. Maybe down the road, if we ever do a Leatherface list, I'll come around, but just wasn't having it today. But the next band, Dickie, is a band that I do like. We're heading way back to the East Coast, from Philadelphia, from the ashes of Kid Dynamite. I believe they're in that tree, and that's another. I would love to do a Kid Dynamite family tier list one of these days. But I'm talking about the Loved Ones, who have 2 LPs and 2 EPs. And in my opinion, one of those LPs is fantastic. One of those EPs is fantastic. The others are, you know, meh. They're listenable. But I'm putting the Loved Ones in my S tier. Keep Your Heart is probably in my top 50 albums of all time. I love that record. What are you doing with this one, man?
If that's how it's gonna be, wake me up, run me from that, so let me drink from that.
So I've got the Loved Ones in my C tier.
Wow.
But that's no disrespect. Like, but I only really like the self-titled EP and Keep Your Heart. The rest I'm a bit kind of indifferent to.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, I couldn't really justify ranking them any higher based on the other bands that are in and amongst it. I still think they're a great band, though. Absolutely no disrespect meant. But yeah, I on another day they could have been in my S tier as well. So yeah, totally see your decision there as well.
Yeah, I'm 100% on the same page with you. Like, Build and Burn is average at best. I don't really listen to any of it. It's just really the EP and Keep Your Heart just catapulted so high for me. Like, Keep Your Heart would be my favorite album out of all the bands on this list. So for that reason, that's what's catapulting it all the way into my S tier. But up next, we've got Nothington, formed in 2006 out of the ashes of Tsunami Bomb. What do you think about these guys?
I'm a big Nothington fan. Really like the Borrowed Time record. One of my favorites, actually. I have got Nothington in my B tier amongst Anchor Arms, and again, that's just purely because of the other bands that are on the list. I still think they're a phenomenal band, absolute top tier, and despite me not putting them in the top tier, it's just how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah. See, this was my big riser. Like, I was really familiar with In the End, the album, and I think Cobblestones is like a fantastic song, but I had not really dived into the older stuff. Like, I'd heard a handful of songs here and there, but like listening back to those earlier albums, I was like, damn, this band like just is like severely underrated. So they went all the way from my C to my A. Just like at first I was just ranking it on In the End. But like I'm going A tier on Nothington, man. I really enjoyed this band. Like I said, my big riser. So, but that was my big surprise for me. Like I still think In the End is probably my favorite album by them. I I think that's the last thing they did. I don't know if they broke up or what. But yeah, Nothington's going in my A tier. And up next, Dickie, this is the one band on the list that I really just don't care for at all. Red City Radio, the most popular band on the list, at least according to Spotify. They're the only band with over 100,000 monthly listeners. But what are you doing with Red City? I'm really curious here.
So they scrape into my C tier, and that's mainly on the strength of their early work, especially the Titles record. But I don't really care for their most recent stuff. It's not my jam, as the kids might say.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Like back in 2020, I think it was 2020, like Paradise had come out and I was seeing it all over on top 10 lists. So like I made an honest effort to listen to it and it was just too kind of country influence for me. Like I call it like pickup truck punk and it just doesn't do it for me whatsoever. I'm putting them in the D, and this was the easiest choice, even easier than putting Dillinger 4. My S was Red City Radio in the D. Just not a band I care for at all. Easy choice. But up next, the last band, man, we kind of blew through this. A band, I had seen the album art before, but I don't know if I ever listened to this album. And despite them being from Long Island, I did not know that either. We've got Small Arms Dealer, and I thought this was kind of similar to Anchor Arms, both in that I wasn't too familiar with it, just kind of seemed a little bit by the numbers. I could see where you're putting it, and you could see where I'm putting it, so we're a little bit different. But I did enjoy the album, but I'm going to end up putting it in the C just based on the game. Decent record, but just it's not going to pass Latterman or Chinese Telephones for me. What about you, Small Arms Dealer?
You can't make me go home. I don't need a hand to hold.
So you can see I've only got one slot left, and mine is in the A with Latterman. Yeah, I really like Small Arms Dealer. I think they're a massively underappreciated band, and if you've not heard them before, you should really check out like both their long LPs. They're both really good if you're into anything kind of even skewing towards orgcore. You may just enjoy them a bit more than John did.
Yeah, they're decent, and I like you've got the two Long Island bands in your A tier. I didn't see that coming. Like I kind of figured your S tier, but the rest of it's pretty surprising for me. Loved Ones down in C. I wasn't sure how you felt about Red City Radio, so I'm not surprised to see them in C or D. What was your big surprise from me other than Leatherface?
Possibly the Ergs being in A. But then, you know, that like I know a lot of people really love the Ergs, so I think you either love them or you're kind of a bit indifferent to them. And unfortunately, I fall into the indifference category. But yeah, I can't really fault, apart from Leatherface in D, the majority of your rankings, to be fair. And so what's the plan? Are we going to have the kind of best bands go on for the Ultimate Orgcore Rank-a-thon once we've done a few of these lists, or what we doing?
That's not a bad idea, because I mean there's several bands off the top of my head. One of my favorite orgcore bands, I won't spoiler it, but we skipped them. They were on the original list, but they're not on this one. They're going to be on part 2, I hope. But like just so maybe we compile like our S's for 5 episodes, or our S and our A's from 3 episodes, and then we rank those from there. We break it down even further. But like looking back, is Dillinger 4 the only band we agreed on? Like it's still early for me, but based on what I could see, I think Dillinger 4 is the only band across 10 that we have in the same tier, which I don't think has ever happened before on the show. So that's pretty cool.
It's variety is the spice of life, and I've brought that little bit of paprika for all the Punk Rock Radar viewers, hopefully. But yeah, it's one of those things that like the bands that on any other day could have gone up or down if you introduce and swap out bands here and there. So yeah, looking forward to part 2. If you'll have me back for it, and we can discuss a few more old core bands and go from there.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do it. I like the idea of the series. Hopefully you guys out there watching it like it too. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe. But we really appreciate it. Let us know your favorite core bands, which one should be on part 2. And I want to thank Dickie again for coming on the show. It's not the last you're going to be seeing of him. But yeah, we've got a couple cool things coming up after this video. I'm not sure exactly when this one's going to go live. Most likely Saturday the 10th. And then we've got Strung Out coming up, Suicide Machines, a couple other lists in the mix. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.